now that you've had a baby, you might find yourself feeling, I hate the way I look. I look and feel disgusting. You can't stand to look at yourself in the mirror. Well, if that's you, today we're hearing from one mom who feels very much the same. Now, before we dive into this conversation, if we haven't hung out before, my name's Brianna. I'm a fellow mom and a money coach, and here we answer questions from moms for moms all about money and real life. But with that, let's dive into today's conversation. So, this mom wrote, I'm really struggling with my postpartum body. I knew I grew a tiny human and I'm so grateful for that, but I can't but help feel disappointed with how my body looks. I feel like I'll never be the same again. Now, can I just say I can completely relate to this sentiment that you know your body did something amazing, you know that your body grew a human, like you're so happy with the life that you have in your child, but there's also like this weird grieving process that happens knowing that your body's never going to be the same. Like even though we know that our body can recover and do amazing things, we also know that there's a lot of changes that happened in our body going through the entire birth experience that's just like your body's not meant to revert back to how it used to be in the same way as though it never experienced birth before. And I think sometimes, like, even though we know this, like, we don't really fully comprehend what this may feel like until we're on the other side of having given birth and like dealing with not only the fact that like we're completely new moms and we're trying to figure out like how to take care of a child that is completely dependent on us, but we're also struggling with the fact that like our body looks and feels completely different than how we were prior to having a baby before we gave birth, because now it feels like since we're no longer carrying our baby, it's like, okay, like even though we may be logically aware that something's different, like sometimes it just feels like emotionally like, well, I just expected that my body would feel the same way it did before I had a baby inside. And that can be a really strange feeling of realizing that that's not the same. And even though you might be expecting that, like that doesn't necessarily mean that your emotions are fully ready for that experience. So she continues and says, when I was pregnant, I didn't mind the looks from strangers. It was evident I was pregnant. But now that I gave birth, it feels like I'm being judged every time I go out, especially when I run errands without my son. I wish I had a sign that said, I have a baby, give me a break. I know it's all in my head, but it feels like I don't have an excuse anymore to be the size I am. So I can completely relate to this mom's experience. So when just like every mom that goes through, giving birth or, being pregnant, like I ended up gaining quite a bit of weight, just like the majority of moms out there. And especially when you're kind of told like, okay, well, throughout your pregnancy, you need to you need to gain a certain amount of weight, that this is like the healthy range to be in. And then I'm more naturally fairly petite, but I always had like just being more self-conscious about certain aspects of my body. But as soon as I became pregnant, it was like, well, like it's okay that my body looks this way because I'm pregnant. And like, there's so much like, I don't know, like however big your belly gets, like that's, like that's almost like, wow, you look so huge, you look so pregnant. And like the bigger and faster your belly grows in pregnancy, it's like, there's just a lot there can be a lot more like social acceptance, social like congratulations around the fact that your belly's so large when you're pregnant. And then I felt for me, especially since being a little bit more, the entire portion of growing up being more self conscious about my belly and knowing like, okay, well, now that I've given birth and I don't have, a baby in there anymore, my belly's saggy, my belly's big, like it's very bulky and protruding. It just feels like a glob of fat. And like knowing that already have felt like, okay, I feel very self conscious about this aspect of my body. And then now feeling like, wow, there's like there's not all of this social acceptance around the fact that like my body looks this way since I gave birth, because now it just feels like I'm being judged because I'm not like taking care of myself. Like no one has known from like some stranger that walks up to you to say like, okay, well, you just had a baby, like that's normal, that's pretty standard. It just felt like everyone that I was seeing was judging me and like, oh wow, you can't take care of yourself. Like, why are you 40 pounds overweight? Or, I had this experience where after I gave birth to my second son, that I was getting together with a group of my high school friends, and just like knowing that I was going to show up and I was like at the heaviest moment in my life, just like knowing like, oh, I'm so ashamed of how I look right now, but like there's nothing I can do about it. Like this is how I look, this is how my body is. And to just like not go just because I was ashamed with how my body was. It was a really weird way of emotionally feeling like I was disappointed with myself, but then also like logically trying to say, like, Brianna, you need to give yourself some grace. So I can completely relate to how this mom is saying, like, if you feel judged by everyone else, I don't think that's unusual, but I also think that we kind of like need to just be aware that like when we are pregnant, there's a strange social, again, this social like celebration that happens. Like everyone's like, oh, so congratulatory about you expecting, and then as soon as you give birth, like it's almost like your body feels like it's completely discarded and just like, wow, she can't take care of herself. Like there's this like expectation, I think, not only just like in society, but also that is displayed to us in social media, and not even just social media, but also just like mainstream media anyway, of like, you see the moms on the magazines and like, they've got a baby on their hip and they're only a few months like postpartum, and they're like, I got my baby, like my pre-baby body back, and like 3 months to regaining your body confidence, all of those things on like the covers of magazines. And it's just like, I think it sets this expectation inside of us to say like, you have to look like this, you have to walk out of the hospital and you have to still fit in the exact same pair of jeans you were in before you got pregnant. And the other thing too is there's also a little bit of like, if you've ever had some friends that like, so because everyone's body is different, like I've had some friends that after they gave birth they looked just the way they did before they were pregnant, and I was just like, this is so unfair. You know what I mean? Like I'm still over here struggling several years after my baby was born, and they're like now a kid and I still have some of the baby weight, and it's just like, why does this not seem to affect other women, yet it does seem to affect me? So I think that everybody, since it is different, that it's not uncommon to feel this way. So she continues and says, I thought breastfeeding would help me lose the weight, but I'm constantly hungry. I think I may be gaining weight, not losing it, but I can't bring myself to step on the scale to find out. Oh, yeah. I want to work out, but between all the night feeds and other tasks, I'm already so exhausted. I kind of had this expectation also when I was pregnant with my first. Like, you hear everyone say like, oh well, breastfeeding ends up burning so many calories, and that will help you lose all the baby weight, like just as long as you're nursing, like it'll just come off. And that was not my experience at all. In fact, I had a very similar experience as this mom, where when I was breastfeeding, I actually felt even more hungry. I was just like, I'm more hungry than when I was pregnant. Like I just cannot keep enough food in me. And also knowing that I was probably eating more than I needed to, but also like trying to work with my hunger cues because I was nursing, it just felt like I was in like this struggle against my body, against myself, feeling like, okay, I want to lose weight, but I also want to make sure I'm able to nurse, but like I'm always hungry. And then also knowing like if I want to lose weight, then I can't eat quite as much as I want to or feel like it. And I, from my experience, and I know every mom's experience is different, but I just got to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm going to give myself some grace. I grew a baby in my body for 9 months. And there's this, this whole thing of like the fourth trimester. So I was like, I'm going to give my body an entire year and I'm not going to worry about losing the weight or how I look. I'm just going to do what feels good to me. So that might just be, I'm going to rest more. I'm going to eat when I'm hungry. I'm, only going to work out on the days that I feel like I have energy, and just like give grace over my body for an entire year. And then for me, since that's like the route that I went, I was like, okay, I know I want to have another one. I know it's even harder to lose the weight as you have more kids. That so I was like, okay, I want to get down at least to my pre-pregnancy weight before I get pregnant again. And that was a good goal. And since I kind of wanted like 2 or 3 years between my kids anyway, I was like, this I feel like is a more realistic time frame of saying like, okay, I'm going to give my body like a rest year, and then I'm going to give my body like 1 year where, because at that point I was thinking like I probably won't be nursing. I'll have more energy because my baby will be sleeping more, and then I'll more so focus on my health and getting back to a place where I felt comfortable. And I did, and it did happen that way. And that didn't necessarily mean that it didn't come with sacrifice. But I also think that because I was like, okay, this is my physical goal of feeling healthy and feeling like being concerned with how much weight that I had gained with my first, knowing that, okay, I didn't want to start at a higher threshold with my second. I think it gave me a lot of motivation. And then with my second, I again gave myself a grace year. But then I was like, I wasn't planning on having more kids after my second. So there wasn't quite as much motivation to necessarily feel like, okay, I'm down all the way to, my pre pregnancy, like body weight, etc. And then, as you get older, things change too. So, I don't know if that you might find that helpful, but that was one way that I just like wanted to like give my body the ability of knowing like, hey, it's okay for me to grieve the fact that my body is different. It's okay to let my body rest. It's okay to like get the like eat when I feel hungry because I am nursing, and not be so hard on myself to feel like I immediately have to rebound and fit into those jeans that I wore before I was pregnant, even though I've had a couple of other people in my life that I know that was their experience, yet that was not mine. So that's kind of how I ended up handling it. So she continues to say, my husband has been great. I think this is so beautiful. Like, I think that this makes such a big difference. He says, I'm beautiful, but I can't stand to look at myself in the mirror. I know a lot of other moms have felt this way. I guess I'm just hoping to hear how you coped with it. So I think I probably have hopefully given you some other things to think about and like some encouragement at this point in our conversation. But I do think it's really incredibly encouraging to hear you say that you do have a husband that still finds you beautiful, that still is really incredibly supportive. My husband, I think, has just like, knowing that women in general can be more sensitive about it, he never mentions my weight ever, only in the fact that if he ever mentions it, it's always in like the fact of like, oh, you look good. Like he's always telling me, how good I look, even if I don't necessarily feel it. And I do recognize that I am incredibly blessed to have someone that is so supportive of me. And I would say that I do think there is, in a way, some men, I know this may not be the case with all of them, but I think that some men that are incredibly supportive of their wives and also recognize how much happens to our bodies as we go through birth and as we go through pregnancy and then give birth, like also kind of hopefully also like mentally are aware that our bodies are going to be different after, on the other side of having children. And also, I think if they can recognize and respect that that change is going to occur, and again, that there are aspects of your body that are never going to be the same, and that is part of choosing to grow your family in this way and like create a family together, that the men that are willing to support us women in that way, I think are just incredible. And we should be so grateful, but also like recognize how unique. And unfortunately, I do wish this was more common, just like appreciate that about them when we do find it. Um, so I would say, like, because you said I can't stand to look at myself in the mirror, there were some, what I would maybe the thing that helped me with that, because I do remember just like waking up or like trying to like look away and not look at the mirror when I would, use the bathroom or be in there to brush my teeth. And like I would take my toothbrush and I would put toothpaste on my toothbrush and I would like get ready to brush my teeth and I would walk onto the other side of the bathroom, or like walk, like out of the bathroom and brush my teeth in the hallway, because I just didn't want to stare at myself. Like when we are like at the most vulnerable part of our life in the stage of like this aspect of being postpartum, like not only are there so many emotions, so many like different chemicals and reactions going on in our body, but it's also like really hard to see our body in the spot that we're the most vulnerable to where we have ever been, especially if there are characteristics that we are now, having, like with me and my belly, like knowing that that was always like something that I was self-conscious about, and it was even more protruding after I gave birth. Like I just kind of, the best way I probably coped with it is just to like not look at it. And it was kind of like out of sight, out of mind. Now I still felt it on me. Like I could, I was still had to interact with it. Like you can't just escape your body. But I do also think that sometimes like wearing different clothes that made me feel good in what I was in, and like doing my hair and makeup when I had the energy to do it, or just like doing small things that helped me feel like I was taking care of myself, even if I wasn't necessarily focusing on like, okay, well, I'm trying to lose weight, or I'm, trying to be more active, or I'm trying to like diet, like again, just giving myself some grace and knowing like, okay, what is one thing that I can do to help me feel and appreciate the body that I'm in right now and the stage that I'm in, even though I don't necessarily love every single aspect about my body at this present moment. And there are still, I will say this, I think that every woman struggles with some aspect of different features of their body that they don't like. And even if you see the most confident woman out there, she just might not have publicly displayed it or felt that you were the person to confide in that area. I think that sometimes we feel more self-conscious about certain aspects, whereas like other people might like say like, oh, that's something that I find so attractive or I love about you, you know what I mean? Like some women are like, oh, my legs are so skinny, and then I look at like their legs and I'm just like, what, you have great legs, like I would love to have your legs, you know what I mean? Like I think there's always going to be a little bit of like not appreciating what we don't have. So just giving ourselves grace in this really vulnerable time and allowing ourselves more time, because our bodies are going to react and function and like change completely different than another person's body will. And so to compare this, like, okay, well, she dropped her baby weight in 3 months, so why can't I drop my baby weight in 3 months? Well, the circumstances of her life might be completely different. Also, in the fact that her body is completely different. So, hopefully, that does like give you some things to think about as well as encourage you. But there were some other things that I did see that moms wrote in that were also incredibly encouraging. So I do want to read off some of those to you. So maybe you'll find these helpful as well from a different perspective. And one mom says, I kept grieving the person I was before each pregnancy. So it sounds like she went through several different pregnancies and that she kind of had to go through these emotions every single time. So I do think if you are anticipating to have more kids, or if you're finding yourself going through all of these same things, every single kid you have, like in some ways, I think that if we, go through this season of like, oh, I recognize all of these emotions, I recognize and can like appreciate and feel them all, because I know, down the road how to cope and how to manage all of these emotions. Like it feels in a way like comforting to know like, okay, this is normal. I've experienced this before. I know how to get through it. But I also think that sometimes we do, with every single birth and with every single like going through that birthing pregnancy experience, it is going to be different every single time on the other side of it. And there is this like natural aspect of like your body's not the same. It's okay to grieve that your body's not the same. And it's okay that like that you are different. And as long as we can love and appreciate the person and the body that we are in now, I think is ultimately where we kind of want to end up. So another mom said, I try to treat myself like I treat my daughter. If I wouldn't say it to her, I don't say it to myself. I try to take care of myself like I would want someone to take care of her. And I think that this is so beautiful. Like in a day and age where we're being bombarded with all of these subliminal messages, especially what can be like negative messages and emotions about our bodies and about like how we're feeling as moms, and like we need to be doing more and we need to look like a different way, or our body needs to be this way. And I think that ultimately, if we kind of think about like, okay, what is the message that I would want to leave my daughter? Like what would I want to ingrain in her? How would I want to validate how she looks and how she feels? Sometimes that might just be like, hey, she needs more rest, like, or she needs, an opportunity to comb her hair and have a makeover. And, knowing that that's going to be really special for her. Well, we sometimes need to do the exact same things for us. Like sometimes we need more rest. We need, to have a makeover day. We need to feel confident in what we're wearing, even if we're recognizing that, okay, I don't like my body in this season, but I still feel confident and secure in what and how my clothes fit me. Um, so the one thing I do want to leave you with is one mom said, I tell myself to love my body. It created a complete human being. I still cry in the shower knowing that I don't want to look at myself in the mirror, but I cry less now than what I did several months ago. And she finished it with, it's okay to feel sad about the changes that occurred in your body. It doesn't make your love for your baby any less valid. And I really completely agree. So I hope that this episode encouraged you for wherever you're at in your journey. But if you're a mom that can relate to anything that we discussed in this conversation, I would love to continue this conversation in the comments. But until we hang out again, create a home your heart loves.